Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Dynamite Shirt Printing, Kyle Metz. What a guy. He came on as a sponsor, and my primary use for him is drop shipping. So what that means is that I don't got to buy inventory. I don't got to buy a bunch of t-shirts. Kyle handles it all. So it's ordered online, and then he prints it and ships it, and he handles everything. And it works out for both parties. If you're looking for something else like general screen printing, he handles that. He does embroidery. He does direct to garment, DTG, which means you can do one-offs, and there's no minimum on that. Kyle's been able to help a lot of businesses that I've been funneling to him just to get going and to, start up. I mean, you don't want to order 100 t-shirts when you're just coming out the gate. And Kyle can handle small orders, large orders. He can handle everything you need. That's Dynamite Shirt Printing, and it's dynamiteshirtprinting.com. Go check it out. My favorite skate shop in the Valley, 5anddimeeaston.com. You can shop online or in store. Their address is 140 Northampton Street, Easton, PA. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 11 to 7, Saturday, 10 to 7, and Sundays, 11 to 5. They carry clothing, shoes, boards, accessories, and more. You can get complete decks down there. They got grip. They got some local clothing down there as well. I know a couple guys that came on the show that they're now selling stuff in store, and they're exclusive to Fucked. They are doing so much for the independent skate community. They're doing so much for the DIY. They're doing a lot in the area with skateboarding, and I couldn't be prouder to have them as a sponsor. Their story is incredible, from starting it when they were 18 and then coming back later in life to opening up what the store is that they wanted. And the two guys down there are just incredible. I can't say enough good things about them. I love that they're a sponsor, and they really help out in the community. And if you skate or want to support them, please go check them out locally. It is 140 Northampton Street, Easton, PA. Online, it is 5anddimeeaston.com. Please go check them out. All Valley Rooter, Jared LaBarba, friend of the show, childhood friend, Never Again Studios official plumber. 24-hour emergency services. 610-762-1656. That's 610-762-1656. They charge by the job, not by the hour, and they are 100% fully insured. They have free estimates. They also do installation and repair. They have a list of things. I can't go over them all on here, but you can find them at allvalleyrouter.net. All of Jared's services are on there. It's a beautiful website. You can contact him through that website. You can find out how to do, emergency services. Where should I call? Who should I contact? You can get all that there at allvalleyrouter.net. Free estimates, fully insured. Jared LaBarba. Check him out.
I'm Mark. They call me Rip. Rips Auto Detail. You can find me on Instagram, Rips Auto Detail, RIPS Auto Detail. You can hit me, Mark, at ripsautodetail.com for my email. So if you want to call me, 484-553-1366. Social medias, really, you'll see most of what I'm doing. But for the business, give me a follow on Rips Auto Detail. Watch what I'm doing. If you're interested in paint corrections, ceramic coatings, anything in the Lehigh Valley as far as highline aesthetics for your vehicle. We're not talking cheap stuff here, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. It just is what it is. I've been working at this for a long time, and if you want someone to take a prideful approach to the aesthetic care of your vehicle and really turn you out a product that you haven't experienced with someone else before, give me a shot, man. It's a one-man approach, and everybody gets the same level of devotion. Obviously some jobs cost more and some less, and you've got to draw a fine line there. It's easy to really obsess over things and go too far sometimes and over-deliver. It's never really a bad thing, though. So give me a shot.
I have no clue what episode number we're on. Never Again Radio. Welcome to Never Again Radio. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
We talked for quite a bit when you got here. I'm like, this show's going to be easy. We'll be able to bang this one out. I'm trying to think. When I was first introduced to you was probably when I was going over to the public market, and I was kind of starting my relationship with sailors, and then I would kind of start perusing to the different things, and then I would always get like a chocolate chip cookie, and then when sailors started making the sandwich of the week, and then I had that, And I looked at her and I'm like, yo, I'm like, who did this bread? And she's like, the lady right over there. And then that's when I kind of like, and then I was like, oh man, that's so genius. They're getting in-house bread 5 feet from them.
Yeah.
And this lady definitely knows what she's doing, because this, in my opinion, and I'll shout it to the top of my lungs on anywhere in the Lehigh Valley, that is the best bread that I've ever had that's come close to anything that remotely tastes like something in Philadelphia, New York City, or what you go to a city to get their sandwich for. I was overly blown away, and now I get to pick through your story.
Making me blush now. God.
So how did you even remotely start getting into food, to baking, to even get to the level of where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in high school, going to school was not my favorite thing. I would say, a bit of a troubled youth. So I knew I was never going to go to college. I was really having trouble kind of fitting into any kind of academic role. But I had always grown up watching Julia Child, watching all of the PBS cooking shows, kind of cooking with my mom in my kitchen. My mom's an amazing cook. So I had an opportunity in high school to do an internship at anywhere I wanted, anywhere in the city of Boston, where I was going to high school at the time. And I ended up in a fine dining restaurant called Great Bay, which is unfortunately not there anymore. But I made some important relationships there. I ended up staying out after I graduated from high school. I ended up staying at that restaurant for 3 years until I decided to, kind of pursue higher education at the CIA in Hyde Park, New York.
So when you got I just want to slow it down a little bit. So, well, one, what were you making in the kitchen with your mom? What was the base and the style of food? And kind of bring us back to that, because I remember being as a kid and cooking with my grandparents and stuff like that. And like my grandfather baked and my grandmother cooked. So like she would make like a pot roast, and then my grandfather would like go hiking and pick berries, and then he would make a pie. So like
Wow.
kind of walk through like what you used to do as a kid in the kitchen.
My mom is the queen. She's a school teacher, so she worked full time in the Boston public school system. And she was the queen of coming home and cooking a meal in about 20 minutes with things she found in the refrigerator.
Yes.
And that is
It's the best way to learn to cook.
Absolutely. And, so she would always like, go, you have to chop this onion, you can wash these vegetables for me. And then we would just kind of throw something together just to make sure, because like my dad, if you didn't have dinner by like 5:30 at the latest, he was going to start to
So now you're getting your speed, your timing, and your creativity down.
Exactly. We didn't really bake a lot at home. That was something that was like really foreign to me. And, I think back of the first pastry chef I worked for, like just the patience she had with me. I remember she asked me to like scale out a batch of cookies, and she said, keep all the dry ingredients together, and then like, keep the butter and the sugar separate. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh, sugar, that's a dry ingredient. Let me put that with the flour, not realizing, oh, the way you make chocolate chip cookies is you have to cream the butter with the sugar and then add in the eggs. And then, and so I think I did that like 2 or 3 times before like I went home and I read like the back of like a Nestle's like chocolate chip bag, and it said like cream the butter with the sugar. And I went in the next day to the restaurant. I was like, I read the back of the Nestle's like toll-free like chocolate chips, and it said you have to cream the butter and the sugar. You were right. And she was just like looked at me, and I was like, I don't know how she didn't kill me. I don't know.
It's funny when stuff like that clicks.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that makes sense. So like after you kind of were getting into, you said the next part, then you had the opportunity to scholarship, was it you said?
No, I didn't get any scholarship. I was lucky just to like get into the 2-year program with the CIA. During that, you also have to do an externship. And so I went to Farallon Restaurant in San Francisco, which is how I first kind of like fell in love with San Francisco. And I always, wanted to move. I was like, it was only a 2-month period that I was there, and so I always said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this the right way.
Did you like travel, and like did you want to kind of leave the area you were in and kind of get out?
I mean, I knew Boston was a very expensive place to live, and I knew that my chances of being able to buy like a house or something were probably small. So I kind of wanted to get away from that area, just kind of to see more than what Boston had to offer for sure. But other than like New York and Pennsylvania and California, those are the only places I've really gotten to kind of like extensively live in and check out.
So how was it when you went to the next spot in San Francisco? How was that for you to uproot and kind of start your adventure?
I mean, that was definitely wild. That was definitely,
Was that the first time you were out on your own?
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. It was and I had just turned 21. So
Yeah,
I was just
doggy.
living it up in San Francisco, having a good old time. Yeah, so I definitely enjoyed myself.
That's cool. So what was the schooling like when you were there?
It was definitely very rigid, very kind of like, this is the way you learn French technique.
Yeah.
Like, we were going to
Were you used to that style discipline at that point in your life?
I definitely had thought I was on that track with everything working in the restaurant. I thought I went into the CIA having had like 4 years of real restaurant work experience, where a lot of the peers in my class were not really having that kind of same experience.
Yeah.
So there was something, but like, there's a lot of things about baking and pastry that are very science and technique based. So unless you kind of pay someone for some of that education, it's harder to get that working. Like, when you work in a kitchen on like the hot culinary side, it's a lot easier to kind of pick up all of the skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas baking is like understanding why we're making a sponge cake this way versus a pound cake this way versus, pâte à choux this way. That's something like learning how to build like the larger wedding cakes and stuff. That's not something that you really have a ton of opportunity to learn on the job. So I appreciate the school for that and for, all of the networking that I've gotten.
Everybody always talks about what you just said, where cooking and baking are so different. And then it's something you hear, it's something you tell people without understanding it. And then when you actually get into baking and bake more than just like a box cake and stuff like that, it is literally night and day with how everything works. And I'm so used to like pushing flavor around and just kind of adding things, and there's like super leeway to almost like if it's a canvas paint. And the other side of it is you have the ability to do that, but it's just in such a different box that's like inside something that's tucked away that you have to literally spend time on opening, figuring out. And then when you figure that out, you can move flavor around. But until we really got into doing it, and Gina's way deeper than I am, I just can't wrap my head around it that far because I have other stuff I want to work on. But from learning and understanding how much it takes to really unlock that, it's super impressive to do it at a high level. And even to just kind of screw around at home, I was like, oh man, it's very frustrating. It was a lot of mental, like, you have to be obsessed to like, well, I got to do it again. And then like, I mean, we obsessed with the bagel for going on 3 years now. And in my opinion, we could still work on it and always make it better. But until I understood how much work that actually is to understand it, it's not for everybody at all.
Yeah.
It's not easy to understand. Cooking's way easier to kind of have people kind of come and go and figure it out.
Yeah,
everybody can put a little bit of themselves into it. The baking is like a very uniform thing. I wouldn't have lasted in schooling like that. Like, you said troubled. I was definitely the same. So it's like to have that kind of base on it, it's almost like, like math, science. It's not recessed at all. What was it like for you to be there and kind of be out on your own and then start learning this craft and technique? Was it overwhelming? Was there ups and downs? Did you feel like at any point you just wanted to kind of go home?
No,
what was it like being there?
At that point in my life, I was like a very overconfident.
Can you pull this just a little bit closer?
Yeah. I was a very overconfident 21-year-old for sure. And I was like, I could do this. I'm going to be a pastry chef. As soon as I graduate culinary school, I'm going to have my first James Beard Award by 25. I'm going to have my first kid before I'm 30. My husband, I had everything kind of planned out. And that was, I didn't lack for confidence, which was, I think, a good thing at that point. But I mean, I could have probably been a little bit more humble and kind of learned and listened a little bit more. If there's anything I could go back and do, I'd be like, I would have taken myself about 5 pegs down and just chilled out.
Yeah. Did you get taken down pegs later on then, or like where did you kind of level out at?
I think it was more kind of once I opened my own restaurant and everything, or opened my own bakery and everything was on top of me. In a way, I mean, I had been a chef. I had been a manager of people in multiple different positions before that. But that was the first time that it was like, I didn't have an owner to turn to. I didn't have somebody else that I could turn to and be like, how can I solve this problem?
Super
How
heavy.
can I fix this? And that was when the weight of everything. And then I started to look back on more of like, other bosses that I had and like kind of the hard time I had given some of them.
It's
And,
weird.
like,
It's weird when you self-reflect on stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, where did your journey go from San Francisco then? Because we talked before the show. I didn't realize that your background was cooking and that you were cooking before you even got into baking.
Yeah. So from San Francisco, you take your internship in like the middle of the year. So you go for your first part of a year, you go on your externship, and then you come back for like the second year at CAA. So I had another year of schooling to do. From there, I was kind of not really ready to leave culinary school yet. I was starting to have some like separation anxiety from like my college experience. So I decided to accept a teaching assistant position at the bakery that is inside the CIA. There are 6 different restaurants at the CIA that students are run completely by students. There'll be like a couple instructors in the class as well. But for most people, that's like some of your last classes you take before you graduate. So I ran the bread program for the Apple Pie Bakery, which was a really great experience. I got to work under a really amazing chef, Francisco Magoya, who he had been the pastry chef at Bouchon before he came to the CIA. He is now at the, what are the guys that make those like really crazy like gastronomy textbooks that are out in Seattle? Their name's totally slipping my mind. The like molecular gastronomy. I don't know. So he works for those people, like just doing crazy, weird desserts. So
Yeah. That's
he
fun.
was definitely a big motivator and mentor for me at that point. That was kind of like part of the reason why I really kept like kind of that bug of go to California. But I was dating a guy from Philly at the time when I was ending. It's a year-long teaching assistant position when that position was ending. And my brother was living in Philly at the time. So I was like, well, this kind of makes sense. Like, let's move to Philly. Like, I didn't want to go back to Boston. I didn't really want to go to New York City. And I was like, well, I'll go to Philly. And I remember I checked out like a couple different restaurants. I staged a couple different places, and I still was kind of like on like my young cocky strut. And so they were like offering me salaries that like I felt like was too low. I didn't really want to work for that. And then Lee Shizmar heard that I was living in Philly, and he had just opened Bolit. I think Bolit had been open for me like 6 months at that time. And he was like, I really need a pastry chef. Like, do you want to come and like see what the restaurant's like? So I came out to Bethlehem, fell in love. And then for a while, I was commuting from Philly to Bethlehem every day.
That's crazy.
And yeah, so most people are like, most people, they come from Bethlehem and they try and get a job in Philly. You're living in Philly and trying to get a job in Bethlehem. Like, you're doing things a little backwards. But I was like, I'm into it. This is like what I want to do.
Yeah, I like the way you moved around. I like how you took the teaching and then put your time in for that year, and then is that when you feel like you fell in love with the pastries and the baking and the bread? Like that was like your lane?
That was definitely like I spent a year just making croissants. That was a big part of the croissants and bread. And that definitely,
it's a lot of nibbling on croissants.
Yeah, there was definitely
That's so
a lot
much
of
fun.
snacking. But then I kind of was like, well, I did kind of miss the plated dessert aspect of like, the nightlife of working in a restaurant. And it just felt like kind of like a good opportunity at that time. And so then I actually, committed to working at Bolit. And so then I moved above the fun house.
What did you think when you first saw Bolit? And like, did you see the vision of the restaurant? Did you see
absolutely.
like,
Absolutely. I loved it.
like it was kind of like that is pretty crazy to be in Philly and coming to Bethlehem. Like it's cool to, there are a lot of really cool things in the area. And I feel like people like yourself and others who I've interviewed are, they're just they're really starting to stand out. And like the area is really starting to be kind of like looked over as like, there's a lot of cool stuff in here. But I mean, it says a lot to be, to have the background that you have and then to go through all the things that you did and then end up in Philly and then be coming to Bethlehem.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because like, growing up in Boston, like I felt like such a city kid.
Yeah.
The older I got and I spent time in like actual big cities, I realized Boston's like a little city. It's just like got like a lot of fighting spirit, So then like when I ended up in Philly, I was like, holy shit, this is a really big city. Oh my God. I mean, like, I think every time I tried to go anywhere, this is, of course, like, before, like, GPS, so I would, like, print out my MapQuest directions.
Yeah, MapQuest days.
And I, like, kept
so much anxiety.
I kept ending up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be like, oh, my God, I'm in New Jersey again. Like, I kept going over wrong bridges, and so it just, like, was very stressful. And then I kind of just, like, was like, wow, maybe I am just, like, a quiet country girl. I like Bethlehem. It's nice.
Yeah.
You know, but...
That's cool. So you said you were living above the fun house? That must have been a good time.
Yeah, that was just like, here, Tina.
Was that your go-to spot to go down for a beer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fun though.
Yeah, just like drink there, listen to music, and then just stumble
Your
upstairs.
shift drinks there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then like just wake up the next day, take a shower, roll back over to Bolete.
Yeah. What were your hours when you worked there? What was a day like at Bolete?
I would probably get to work about 11 a.m. and we would finish cleaning up everything. Probably like I'd put last desserts out about like 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And so we'd usually try and be out of there before 12.
Yep. And then you get your decompress at the fun house till 2 or 3, and then you sleep till 10.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. There was something appealing about that. Those long shifts are hard, but if you're working with a crew of people, it's like it feels like you're on like a pirate ship, or you know, like there's a crew, and it literally is a crew, and you have to all work together. And I always love the appeal of that. And then I always just felt so satisfied because the stress and the work, you know, it's very similar to like taking a long format run or going on a hike. And when you have that dump out, and then like I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, where like, and it might have been a guy I worked with, where it's like where you have that dump out and you're just like bitching about the stuff that went on, and you're taking a walk. Like because I can picture you going to the fun house, sitting down, and it's just like, it's just the dump out. But I mean, there's something about working that shift that you can't explain unless you've done it, where you sit down and have a beer then. And then it's just like, you know, it's just a beer. And then and those bars I feel like are such a comforting hug to it, because it's polar opposites of anything you were around all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun that you lived above the fun house.
Yeah, that was a little crazy.
Yeah. It's got to be. Like music and stuff going on there. I'm sure you met a lot of cool people.
Oh, yeah. Lots of really cool musicians in the area and everything. And it was funny because when I came back, you know, like 8 years later, like I went to the fun house and like Rory was there and he was like, I remember you. And he was like, remember when you moved out and you gave me that massive poster? It's still on the wall.
Yeah. That's fun when you leave and you come back and it's almost like, you know, nothing changes. It just doesn't move.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts.
So how long were you at Bolete for?
So I was at Bolete for just about a year. And at that point, you know, I was kind of going through a lot of personal changes. And I was just like, if I'm ever going to go to California, now's going to be the time to do it.
How old were you?
I think at that point I was 23.
Yeah, it's the perfect time to go. I missed my window. And then when you wait too long, I was like 29, 30 when I moved to Virginia, and then I was too homesick all the time because all my friends were just such long term. And if I would have went younger, you're in the more mood and the opportunity to be meeting people. I met a lot of really cool people and it was fun, but I definitely got pulled back because it was too long. Yeah. That's the perfect time for you to go.
Yeah, it was for sure. And like ending up in the Napa Valley, living in Yountville, you know.
What pulled you there?
So I had a friend that worked at Bouchon, and I was just kind of, you know, one day I texted her, and I had already kind of put in my notice at Bolete, and I think I was trying to get a job in Philly. I was trying to like go back and be like, okay, I'm going to work in Philly now. And so then I just texted my friend. I was like, hey, you guys hiring? And she was like, yeah, can you be here in 3 days? And I'm like, I'll pack up my car. So I literally had put on like a deposit down on an apartment in Philly. I called them up and I was like, hey, I changed my mind. I'm moving to California instead. I don't need this apartment anymore. And they're like, well, we can't give you your security deposit back. And I'm like, that's fine. It's okay. I'm going to be all right. So I like had enough money to like get to California with all of my possessions in my car. And then I could like head rent for 1 month if I didn't get that job.
Oh, no.
Because like it just worked out at that.
I love the gambling spirit you have, though. Adventure.
I mean, I had another friend from culinary school that he was leaving. He had like a room for rent that he was leaving because he was going to open Bouchon in Beverly Hills. So he was like, if you get the job, you can take my room. Like, this is what the rent is. And I was like, okay, cool, $500 a month. Like,
it's cool when you try and plan that stuff out, and especially at that age where, man, that really brought me back to like things that, especially with cooking. And like, I tell anyone, like, with cooking, and you can go anywhere, or baking, or in the culinary thing, you can take that job. Even bartending, you can go. You have a skill that, I mean, when I moved to Virginia, it's like I just started working at a whiskey house, and then like there was a guy down there I knew, and I was like, hey, I cook, and it was like I had a job 2 days after I got down there where it's like you can do that, and then it's like fun because you're like, all right, well, I'll get this job, then I have this place to live. I mean, that must have been a blast for you to kind of even put that together, and then when it starts falling together,
then it
it's
all
like
worked
the best
out.
feelings
I was
ever.
like, wow, that was unexpected that this wild choice is just gonna pan out.
Did you road trip there?
Yeah, I drove the whole way. I had
alone?
Yep, I had like no money, so I slept on the side of the road, and just like I think I got one campsite I kind of pulled into, and I just did like cowboy camping. Like, don't tell my mother I did this.
Yeah. This is crazy. Yeah. That's fun, man. So what was it like as soon as you hit Cali? It had to be like...
It was like driving
how did it feel?
into a postcard.
I mean, you're moving there because of like
crazy.
almost personal reasons. You want to get out of the area, and then to drive all that, and I'm sure there's a lot of thinking, radio listening, sleeping on the side of the road. You're going through all of your life, and then when you get there, that's got to be like a big sunshine hug, and you're probably like floored, like, yeah, this is my new life now.
It's pretty amazing because there's two main, like, everybody lives in Napa, and then a lot of people work like up valley and like Yountville and all the wineries. That's like the start of the Silverado Trail, which is like the famous wine country tour. And so you're just driving to work, and there's cascading hillsides covered with grapes. There's hot air balloons going off all around you.
That's so crazy.
It's
like screensavers for old computers.
That was my drive to work every day for 5 years. So that part of it was really cool, and it is such like a hotbed of young culinary talent and people wanting to come in like fresh out of. Everybody had something that they were super passionate about and super excited about. So that was really great, and everybody was kind of like a little bit of a lost orphan.
Yeah.
So there was one bar in town, so everybody at the end of your shift would go to the same bar, so you knew everybody.
Yeah.
Because like 90% of the people that are coming to the town are just like tourists coming to wine country for that experience. So it really, you become like a family for the people that live there year round.
Yeah, that's cool. It just brings me back to working in kitchens because it's like it's very similar. We said it's like lost orphans. Like when you're in a kitchen like that, you kind of like run into people they're either going through the same stuff or they're kind of like the similar. It takes a specific style person that wants that kind of stress. For a job. Now, so you're like meeting new people, and like, what was California living there to you? Like, how was that? Because that's polar opposites of Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. I mean, not gonna lie. On my days off, I would drive up the coast to Bodega Bay, and I would have like, some Shandong sparkling wine and oysters on the beach, and like we'd just like set up barbecues and have like barbecued oysters.
That's fun.
And just like on our days off, I would grab a couple baguettes and cookies from the bakery, and then we would just go to all of like the wineries around, and you just drink and just like, hey, I brought you some baguettes. I work at Bouchon. And they'd be like, what library wine do you want us to open? And you're just like drinking like like a $600 bottle that you just
traded for bread.
That I traded some bread for. And and they're just treating you like you are the VIP, and they're so excited that you're here.
That's so cool.
And you're like, I can't afford these bottles. So that's fine.
Just throwing a scarf over your shoulder. What did you learn cooking there or baking there, and like what did you take from that restaurant that you worked at to kind of build your craft on?
The attention to detail, absolutely. Just like doing things with finesse and how to make something simple be beautiful and elegant, and really kind of appreciating the natural form of bread and how beautiful bread can be, and just like the simple things of like, is this the best chocolate chip cookie you've ever had? Is it crispy on the outside? What's the ratio of chocolate chip to brown sugar to white sugar? To how is it baked in the center? How is that cookie going to taste in 2 days when you take it home? Those attention to details and craft and like perfection. Like, what is the definition of a perfect baguette? What does that look like? What's the color? What does it smell like? Exploring all of those things, and and also having some, like, we all had the core items, but then we were also able, like, and you can experiment if you want to too, because then we'll just do something fun for the French Laundry. So that was really cool, and getting to develop like different small roles that, hey, someone's paying $1,000 tonight for a dinner, and you're making the bread for 3 of their courses. That kind of stuff was really, really cool to be a part of.
What's the stress level like that?
It's definitely high stress, high pressure, but again, everybody's in it together, so it becomes manageable. and that was really nice. Definitely went through some trials there as well. While I was working there was a fire in the bakery, and we lost half of the roof. But they had also been planning on doing like a total renovation of the bakery. So they kind of tied the fire into doing the renovation. So for a year, we were baking bread out of a hotel across the street's kitchen. And we had this like unheated it's basically like the room next to the walk-in cooler was where we could prep bread for like trying to make all kinds of baguettes and stuff for the Bouchon Bistro, and then making all the bread for the French Laundry in this like, you're in like a 40-degree like meat cooler basically, and like overcoming some of those things and like having to pull like speed racks across like a gravel surface to get to the oven room, and like working in challenging situations like that and figuring out problems.
I was just going to say, being in situations like that, especially where you have to work as a team, it really makes things easier later in life. And then you don't realize till you're like in a problem where you automatically know the solution because you had to work through such a bigger problem before. So then like I look at things now where I'm like, just do this. And then I think about it and I'm like, oh, I know how to do that because I had to do this for a year. And it's like you really take so much out of sacrifice. And then for you to be working at such a known place and then to be doing the same work and expect the exact same taste and quality out of a hotel kitchen across the street, it really makes you probably have way more confidence in things you can do on your own as well, because you're like basically creating super high-end stuff in like not the correct situation to do it in.
Yeah, definitely hodgepodge together.
What was it like though for you guys when the kitchen was done to get back home?
So that was kind of funny because like I had put in my notice before like the fire happened, like, and I had like given like I'm gonna give you a 3 months notice that I'm leaving because I've been here for a while, and like the turnaround is quite high there. And then the fire happened, and so then I was like, well, I can't leave now because now I've got to help get through this. And then
that's cool that you stuck that out.
Yeah,
though.
and then
some
we got
people wouldn't have
into the new space, and I was like, well, now it's really nice in here, so I'm not gonna leave now. So
you extended your stay in Cali.
So I ended up staying another 2 years there, and then I was like, okay, now at that point I think I had been doing like the overnight baking shift, so that was like I went in at 10 p.m. and then I was done at like 8 in the morning.
That's a different life to live.
And then you try and go and buy a beer at 8 o'clock in the morning, and everyone looks at you funny. And plus in California, you can buy like hard alcohol at like the grocery store.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but they have it all like roped off. So you feel like a degenerate when you try and like walk up and you're like, oh, I just wanted a bottle of wine. And
it's like giant
ma'am,
now.
it's 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And you're just like, So yeah, I did that for 2 years, and now it's just kind of like, all right, I'm officially done now. I'm officially done with this.
Yeah, night shift is, I remember my neighbor when I was a kid worked night shift, and the one day he was talking to my dad, and he looked at me and he was like, don't ever do it. And he's like, it's not normal to live that way. And there was a couple times I did work night shift, very similar hours to what you're saying, and it is not normal.
Yeah.
To live that way at all. I had to buy like special curtains.
Oh yeah, the blackout curtains.
Yeah. It's like every time I came home, my big meal, I always loved breakfast, but I think that's when I really fell in love with making breakfast, is because it was like that was your decompression, is making breakfast. And then I would eat, and then Saved by the Bell was on because it was like that early. And then I was like, this is just so weird. And then it's also hard to get out of a habit of sleeping right until you got to get up.
Yeah.
It's like,
because then you feel like you're cheating yourself. Like, I'm not sleeping enough because I'm staying up till 1 p.m.
And then if you have stuff to do, and then like you can't get your day going because you got to like get up at 11 and then go to the bank, and then like it's not fun.
Yeah, no, so that was a lot. So from there, and then I had met my my future husband, who was the chef at an Italian restaurant, and they did wood-fired pizzas as part of their menu, and that was something I really wanted to learn how to do.
Did you approach him, or did he approach you?
He was kind of desperate a little bit. And I was like, at first it kind of was like I was helping out. I was like just consulting for their dessert menu and like helping them.
Oh, so you were also.
Yeah. So that I had kind of like left Bouchon, and I was working part-time at a chocolate shop, learning how to make chocolates.
How was that?
It was really cool. I really enjoyed it. washing chocolate molds is definitely like, I love it. It's like you get the super hot soapy water and then like you're with a Q-tip and you're buffing out all these little crevices. That kind of like, I loved that. The lady I worked for was a little bit crazy, but so I was kind of like working part-time there, and then I was dessert consulting on the side as well. And then that kind of just like, they wanted me to do more and more stuff with that. And that's when I was like, I really want to learn how to do pizzas. And they had a guy that was from New York City that had worked at Roberta's. And so I was like, dude, teach me how to make pizzas. And so he kind of took me, I already kind of knew how to shape. And then he just taught me the whole wood fire element of it. Because I was in my mind thinking like, I could use this to make bread someday. Like, let me learn this now.
Yeah, because I was going to ask how similar it is
Yeah.
to the skill set that you had with like making the dough and all that. Did it kind of overlap a little bit? Was it easy to kind of put your take on it?
Yeah, so then once I learned how to make the pizza and do the fire and all of that, then we started doing like nice loaves of bread at the end of the night for table service for the next day for the restaurant. So that was really cool as well. Yeah, so then I stayed at that restaurant for about 2
And then you
more
guys were
years.
just working together.
Yeah, and then
That's
we were
cool.
working together, and that's when we decided we would never work together again.
Yeah. That's not fun.
Because living together and working together, and you
yeah.
have the same days off together, and you have the same friends together.
Yep.
And that
Same
can be,
problems at work together.
That could be a little bit much.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like, okay, this was fun, but let's not do this again.
Never.
Yeah. But it is really nice now, like being in the public market, because he's at Mr. Lee's on like his one corner, and I'm in the bakery over on my side. So I see him like every time I go down to the basement. So we can see each other and talk to each other during the day, but we're not like working together.
That's cool that you guys ended up, and I want to kind of walk the story through that, but it's cool that you guys still ended up in the same building.
Yeah.
So you're done with Callie at this point, and then now
Yeah.
you're dating your husband to be seriously.
Yeah.
And then you want to come back to the area. Is that what Pennsylvania's calling you back? Family,
Basically,
friends back here?
My brother and my sister had my niece, and they were living in Easton. And then my mother wanted to be closer to her first granddaughter, so she actually bought a house in Easton so that she could like come and visit from Boston, like, you know, and have a place to stay. And then my younger sister, she wanted to go to school in Pennsylvania and to get the in-state tuition rate, so she stayed at my mother's house when my mother was not there, to kind of watch over the property. So my whole family was kind of relocating to Easton a little bit. And I knew the area. I loved it here. I wanted to I always knew like there was more to the Lehigh Valley that I really kind of wanted to explore and see. And I loved how close it was to New York City, and to like I could take a bus to the city if I wanted to.
Isn't it crazy how some people don't realize how, like I went to Philly last night and saw Jizza at the Philly Wine House, and they did like a sit-down dinner.
Oh, wow.
It was cool. I've never done anything like that, especially for hip-hop, and they had like a keyboard and a drum and bass, and it was all a live band. But I was like, it took us an hour to get in, and then we saw a show and drove an hour home. And there's people who don't really. I went to New York a couple weeks ago. Like if I'm going next week, like if you really pay attention to how close we are and you time it correctly, it is not hard to get in and out of the city at all. It was so easy to go to Philly last night. We went in, we left at a correct time. We missed traffic. Of course, there's always the one section where you get off and it's backed up as soon as it's going into the city. But I remember going to punk shows as a kid. There was traffic back then. And then we parked, and then we got out. We were by the Reading Terminal, and we're now walking around. I said to him, I'm like, yeah, we could just like come down here for food. We don't have to take in the show. I'm like, we could easily have drove here. And that's what I do with my buddy Kevin, owns Rocky, is we'll just go in for sandwiches. And then just spend the day there, have a couple beers, and come home. It's like, it blows my mind. And as a kid, I never realized how close we were. And then when I started doing it enough, it's really like, you know, I can drive to Reading in an hour.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you, or Scranton, why wouldn't you do that? It just perplexes me that anyone
That's why I feel like it
doesn't
takes me
travel to the city.
45 minutes to get to Allentown.
Yeah.
And then I'm in Allentown. Like,
Yeah.
if I could just go an extra half an hour.
Yeah.
It really cool.
Yeah.
So there was so many things about being in Philly that seemed attractive. And, you know, I knew Lee and Aaron at Bully, and so I said, hey, like, you know, me and my fiance are moving to Easton. A, do you want to cater our wedding? And B, you want to see if he can work for you. Like he can cook really good.
Yeah.
And so so that was the start of his career with them.
And then where were you at that time?
At that time, I was unemployed, wedding planning, and I was trying to get a job at the Sands. But I had been living in California, and I had my medical marijuana card, so I had to wait to test clean in Pennsylvania.
Oh, crazy. I think we're caught up now, right? We're still not there, but we're...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Casinos are that was the other thing, is like learning that side of corporate casino life was like very weird to me. And just like the ideas they have about how to run a profitable casino and what does that look like.
So that was the Sands at the time.
Yeah, that was the Sands.
What is it now? Wind Creek?
Wind Creek. It'll always be the Sands for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't ever say Wind Creek. I went to another casino recently, and I was just like, wow, the Sands really screwed up what they could have done here.
Yeah.
And I can't believe we don't have a cool casino in this area. And somebody who was in charge creatively and all in general dropped the ball 100% and lost it down a drain. Like, like I didn't like, it was cool when it first opened, and I wasn't like, cool. I didn't feel like I was in Atlantic City. I just kind of felt like I was in a conference room. Yeah. And then like, I haven't been back in a while, and then I went out, and then when we were at that casino, I was just like, man, like that was done so wrong.
Yeah, my last day of work was definitely the last time that I was there.
It's not fun.
No, there's nothing about that that appeals to me.
No, not at all. There's nothing there. I think I'll go sometimes to see the comedians. They started bringing in real comedians.
I will say some of the shows have gotten better, I think, a little bit. I don't know. Some of the musical acts were just so strange, the choices that they would make.
Yeah.
But I think the comedians do really well there.
Yeah, like they had, I went and saw Tom Segura, Burt Kreischer. I saw a bunch of different comedians over there. They used to have the fights there. They don't do that anymore. Because I used to, even before I knew the jiu-jitsu guys, I saw Zach fight there, and like we were up in the balconies, and like it was cool. There's definitely like, you could still do cool stuff there. I just feel like who's ever in charge is way too corporate, and it's not the correct things that are there. Yeah. So how was your time there besides miserable?
I mean, it was definitely.
Did you learn anything? Because I mean, I try and take something from everything.
I definitely was really cool to do like banquet dinners of like 500 people and put out like be in a massive hallway and put out 500 plates and like have them all look exactly the same. Like working with like 8 people plating. Like I had never done anything like that before, so that was really cool. Was there still
stress and pressure from that, or did you have the confidence because you were coming from Cali?
I mean, there was definitely. I mean, it was.
Well, I mean, you're a confident person.
There's always pressure, but it's like how do you let the pressure define you? That's like what I always say. It's just like, guess gotta stay calm, and it'll all get out much smoother. Yeah.
What did you take from working there?
That I definitely don't ever want to make anything sugar-free. I learned that I'm like allergic to most of the artificial like sugar sweetener substitutes. Unfortunately, like, you know, that the average age of the clientele is definitely in the older, and so there's a lot more dietary. But it did make me appreciate how you can have dietary restrictions like being gluten-free and getting vegan, and that you just want something good. Like you've been so disappointed by dessert and you just want a nice special treat for yourself. And that really kind of put my mind in the perspective of there's people that would love to have a big slice of chocolate cake, but they physically can't because it's going to make them ill. So how do I make that chocolate cake that they're going to say, I love this tastes good, and I feel good? So that was why when I opened the bakery, it was very important for me to have not just 1 or 2 gluten options or vegan options, but have a couple of different things so that everybody can come in and find something that they enjoy and have like that special treat for themselves.
Did you find a lot of that out in Cali, obviously, because I feel like the trend of that by the time you were out there probably really wasn't going on in the Valley?
That was definitely a trend, but we didn't pay any attention to it.
So you weren't doing vegan stuff out that way at all?
Bouchon is not vegan. Bouchon is not gluten-free. They were like, we are a French bakery.
Yeah.
Like, we are going to do things in the French classical way. We're not catering to people with dietary restrictions. That was like kind of like their thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, and they had the name and the following that they could make those kinds of calls.
Yeah, and I mean, not everything has to be gluten-free or vegan. Yeah. There's some people that just don't even understand it or even want to try and get into it. But then it leaves the opportunity for places to open that are vegan and gluten-free.
Yeah.
So now you're back in the Valley. You're at the casino. What was your step after that?
So then from the casino, then I was like, okay, feel like I have to clean my soul a little bit. So then I was like, I'm going to help open an organic farm market. And I went into the job.
Where do you even consider trying to find something like that?
So, I mean, I reached out to Leisha's Marv Bolit, and I said, hey, I need a new job. Do you know who's hiring? Where should I go look? And he said, hey, I'm consulting with this guy right now that wants to open this like massive kind of like a Wegmans, but completely organic, like lots of hot food options. Like you can buy the steak that was like harvested from the cattle that they've grown, and then we're going to season it. You can get a sauce, a side, you know, and have the whole kind of like steak dinner for a family of 6 that someone can pick up, and everything is completely organic. And, you know, we want to do bread, we want to do ice cream, we want to do breakfast pastries, we want to do cakes, we want to do pies. Like, they had a huge vision. The facility was amazing. It was massive. They had like a rotating pizza oven. They had...
How many people were working there?
75, 80 people.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was absolutely nuts. But I was hired, and it was with the intention that I'd be opening in about 2 months was like the projected timeline. And then it didn't open for a year and a half, with just construction tie-ups and everything, and things being on hold and things not being right.
So did you have to wait, or were you already supposed to be working there?
So I was working there and kind of just like working on development kind of stuff. Like, this is what we're going to do, working out of an office.
That gets old after
Yeah, and so I was kind of dying, but they had a food truck, and when I got hired, the guy that was running the food truck, he quit. So then I was making soups and stuff and like dips and salsas to sell at the farm stand a couple days a week. And then winter hit and everything in the food truck froze up. So I couldn't work out of the food truck anymore. So that was a long, boring winter of lots of planning and meeting and hoping things were going to, and like false starts and stuff like that. And then the springtime came around, and I was like, I really want to open the food truck. And I had never worked on a food truck before, done any kind of like culinary, like fast to order food like that. But I was like, we're going to do this. So we ended up right next to the little farm stand. We just started running the food truck, which was definitely an experience for sure.
I was going to say, that must have felt so good to be that tied up and not being able to use any of your skill sets.
It was like so good to be back into like cooking and having my hands in food and all of that. But I mean, I'm sure you know this, working in a food truck when it's 100 degrees outside and you're in front of a flat top can be a humbling experience for sure. Just like, I mean, I'm not a big water drinker. Like, my husband always yells at me that I need to drink more water.
I'm dehydrated right now. and all I want to do is drink coffee.
Me too. And I would drink like 48 bottles of water like every day. Like, all of us, our shirts would just be completely soaked with sweat. And then like you're helping, like there's like a little league park like right next door to the farm. And so we would just get these like massive swarms of people coming up and ordering burgers all at the same time. So it was nuts. Yeah. It was definitely nuts.
It's definitely, we did it last year with doing the pop-ups, and it reminded me of being in the kitchen again, because I primarily worked a flat top. I worked underneath a lot of talented chefs. The furthest I ever went was just line cook. You know what I mean? Which I don't care. I love the flat top. My big thing is I love speed. I love being able to like figure. And what's funny is like I got to work with a friend of mine, Angelo, and like I was really the low man on the totem pole, in my opinion, that was talented in there. And they were like, "You want to do the fryer?" And I was like, "Sure," but I still had to make it like efficient, and there were still instructions on how to do it. I wasn't just dropping things in. And then it's funny where like you learn that skill of like speed and timing, and then you apply it to cooking, and almost in a situation like that. And I was like, cool. Like, it doesn't go away. Like, it's something that you can really build in. And that pressure of working, like, there was some summertime, like, because I have the van and I have an inverter that I can run to it. So the one time I was running a fan, and like I got a window fan and I like put it next to me, and like it gets brutal. I mean, I worked at the Newburgh Deli, and that's basically an old farmhouse, and there's no air conditioning, and the flat top's there, and it would be like 85, 90 degrees. Middle of summer, it was unbearable. Yeah. And then you just have to keep cooking. And then when you get hit by the rush, that's cool. I think it's cool that you got to experience that. The way you got to just work a food truck. It's something totally different. It's like taking a small kitchen on the go, and then you have like the least amount of shit you need, and then you have to just bang out a bunch of orders, and it's usually popped. It's not like a slow process.
No.
That's cool. How long did you do that for?
So I did that for a year. Yeah, so it was a summer and then a fall.
I like that you commit to stuff for at least a year. And
I always try and stay.
You're
for
learning
at least a year,
stuff
for sure.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like you really get a feeling for somewhere unless you've worked there for at least a full season. So you've like seen a spring through fall, you know. Really get the feel for everything.
So what all did you do on the truck?
We did smash burgers.
Yeah,
that was very
doggy.
popular. They had a great like chip beef.
Yeah.
So we did like a chip beef sandwich with that. French fries.
And it was all fresh stuff. That was probably ridiculous food.
All organic.
Yeah.
All 100%. Like from the mayonnaise, mustard, everything was like 100% organic, and it was their own ground beef and everything. Buns were all organic. So that was really cool.
When did you decide it was time to pack up and head on out of there?
So then when we did the food truck, and then the market building was finally ready to open, and then it was like the timing was unfortunate, but I had already had like kind of like a bad feeling about everything, that this was like not going to work out well.
Yeah, especially when you're in long term and something not working out, and then like you literally see what's going on and why stuff isn't working, and sometimes that's other situations where you're like, oh man, like this isn't ever going to work because this person's here and that, like, I don't know. Yeah. And especially with what you've been through with the story so far, you obviously can read shit because you've been in legit places.
Exactly. Like the owner just really had expectations that he was going to be making $1 million a month from like the day the doors opened. Like he really had that. And when
that's always a massive red flag when the owner just cares about money.
And when that didn't pan out, then it was quickly like, we're gonna have to cut. So I think I had put in my notice and I had left, and then I came back like 2 weeks later to like try and grab something, and they told me that the day before they had let go of half the staff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I kind of saw that coming. Yeah, that's like the first knee-jerk reaction when you're not making the money you want. It's like, well, let's cut costs. And like labor was a massive piece of that place, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, I think they went under they didn't make it through the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, some places are just cool ideas, and sometimes people, I don't know. I've worked with a lot of different people and seen a lot of different things, and usually it's a big red flag when somebody's chasing money.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, that was the last job I ever had as
good for you.
Before I started my own business, and I learned a ton of things. That was like, sometimes you do learn more from failures.
Absolutely.
Than you do from your success.
Everything I've learned up until now is all from failure. I mean, even the fact of running this by myself, and we were talking earlier, and like I always try and point out on here is that like everything that you learn in life, especially with hands-on, and and we talked about it where like you work with people and you're working at a business and you're like, well, why can't I do this? And why am I watching somebody else run a business when I'm doing every job? And then it's like, then you learn from all the different mistakes. And I mean, we comb through it, because there's a time limit on this interview, but at the same time, it's like you've moved and there's so much life that you've lived in between all those different things, and to not pay attention to the lessons you learn, and it's something that you pick up when you get older. Like, it's so important to focus on that. It's like, the next year is always going to be easier because you can not do the same mistakes you did the following year. And like, I was talking to my dad about it, and I'm like, it's just, I didn't give up. And then after 20 years, I'm finally not doing what I was doing, because I remember my dad being like, you're doing the same thing you did last year. And I'm like, well, it takes 5 years till you're like, oh, I should probably stop doing that, because you're just caught up in the business and life and people dying and getting married and my brother having kids. And then like when you actually take all that out and you have time to think, it's like, cool, like let's not do that mistake. Or like when you, like, I'm sure you reading that whole thing that guy was trying to do has really changed the perspective on like you opening up your own business and being like, well, I don't want to do anything like that. Like that was just way too wrong focused. And like how we were talking about earlier about burning out, and like when I open with Gina, it's like, I harp on her a lot. Like I'm not I don't want to overwork anybody. I don't
Yeah.
want to burn anybody out. I don't want somebody to feel like they're not worth the money they're getting paid
Yeah.
for because I want more money and my bills have to be paid on these people. And like,
Yeah.
you work for the wrong people, you can really make the working experience for others very well. And like, that's what I'm excited to do, is to treat my employees how I would have wanted to be treated.
For
And
sure.
you learn all that through not being treated correctly, not having things ran correctly. This is how I would do it. And it all adds up over time to like a moment when I'm going to open my own place. So what was that like for you? I mean, were you like done working with people at that time, and you sat down with your husband and you're like, I think I'm just going to do this?
I mean, yeah, that. I
'Cause
mean,
it's scary.
It was definitely scary because I love getting a paycheck, and I love
Yep.
being like, oh, cool, I worked really hard the last 2 weeks, and now I have a financial thing that shows how hard I worked, and that was always really nice. And so I never really was like, I wanted to own my own business to kind of experience that, but it was more just like I realized that I wanted to be the one that if something failed, I wanted to be like, well, you know what? I can own that failure because everything
Yeah.
was mine. And the same thing, I want to be able to own this is a success. It's a success because of me. That was kind of like like the driving force at the end of the day to make the big like choice. But it was definitely, I was like, I talked to a lot of people that I respect in the industry. I'm like, what do you think about this? How do you think this would go for me? Like, how do you feel? And the biggest message I got was, you should definitely do it. You would be great at it. And even if it's a failure, you're going to learn something. So it can't ever be a full failure. You know, you're always going to learn something. And that was when I was like, you know what? I have the money saved up to do it. I got a loan from the GDP for being a new business owner, just a 0% interest loan, which was amazingly helpful. It was the space had already been tooled to be a bakery, so there wasn't like a ton of renovations I had to do. It was pretty much like plug and play, like put
Yeah,
my
because when they
vision
built
on.
out the public market, I'm trying to remember back
So
when they did it.
very first was Debbie's Pie in the Sky. And she had a hard time. She was very successful at farmers markets, selling her pies, and she's a great lady, like great name. But it was hard for her to transition to being a brick and mortar from doing the farmers markets. So like she made some poor choices in like equipment building and buying. And I think it was just too much to do it. So she went out pretty quickly. And then Brian Bruno from Apple Ridge Farm, he's one of the owners at Scratch. They approached him and he said, yeah, you know, I do a lot of baking at the Apple Ridge. I can do the kind of transfer, take 2 people that I have and they'll do the public market. And then that kind of was a little bit too much. He needed to kind of focus more on he was going through some stuff in his life and he wanted to focus more on like the organic farming and the bread aspect, because that was what he was really comfortable with. So I ended up buying that. That's who I bought it from. And yeah, it was definitely like a nerve-wracking kind of change, but it was also like very rewarding. And I think I'm a different and better owner now than I was when I first opened, because I was a lot more like controlling of micromanaging everything. Like everything needed to have my stamp. I needed to taste everything. I didn't have as much trust in my staff the way I do now, and the ability to just kind of like let go of some things and just like, you know, you can't freak out over everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of
And not everyone's going to make it exactly the way
yeah.
that you're.
And especially it's like, you know, it's hard when like your staff makes a mistake. You can't like if you come down on them and like freak out about the situation, then it's a blow to their confidence. So then they're not as confident in themselves. That leads them to make more mistakes. So it's like I always have the rule, like, you know, you accept your mistake, you forgive yourself, and then you move on.
It's huge.
You know, and it's not about how hard you fall. It's like, how do you pick yourself up? And how, like, I've made a lot of mistakes, and then it's like, you know, how can I turn this into something positive?
Yeah, that hit home. What's funny, because as soon as you said that, I remember somebody that like took me down a peg, and then you don't realize if it was to take me down a peg. But then as soon as you said you didn't want their like confidence to be out, then it flashed in my head how long that messed me up. Months I wasn't the same in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and I had to build back up to where I was, instead of like letting me go and let me do what I want to do, let me work the way that I was creatively working, and then on top of it, just kind of pull me aside and be like, hey, we don't need that to happen again, but you're doing really good, is way different than somebody, I mean, especially if you have an impressionable younger kid who would throw away any dreams of ever cooking because somebody came down on them too hard. And you see a lot of that. It's actually one of my favorite things with wanting to be a boss is to treat people like that, because I feel like not enough people are treated that way in the industry.
Absolutely not.
At all.
I mean, like, I definitely grew up in, like, the industry where I saw chefs, like, pour boiling water on you, or they'd, like, throw you a pan back that was, like, had a burning hot handle to, like, burn you.
Yeah.
Like,
it's nuts.
What? Like, thinking back on that, I'm just like, oh my God. Like, if I, like...
It's like PTSD in a kitchen.
I can't even imagine treating another human being like that and expecting them to perform better.
Yeah. Very odd.
It's just...
Very odd what's expected by, like, screaming and shouting. How did you build your menu out? And, like, how did you build, like, what you wanted to kind of give to the Valley? Because you have different items over there. So, I mean, was it just things that you wanted?
The first thing I thought of is, what is everything I've wanted to eat and I haven't been able to eat? And so I said, okay, I really want a good baguette. I really want a good croissant. And, like, that was the 2 starting points.
Yeah.
And then everything else kind of, okay, if you're going to do a croissant, we'll do a pain au chocolat. If we're going to do a pain au chocolat, we're going to have to do, like, 2 other kinds of danishes to kind of complement that. Round that out with, like, a couple cool muffins, some, like, really good scones, and then, like, a variety of cookies and bars. And that
must have been so fun.
Yeah. And so, and, like, the menu came together in probably, I mean, I literally contacted the manager of the market, Jared Mast, and was like, hey, I heard that Brian Bruno is looking to sell the Apple Ridge Bakery. And he was like, who did you hear that from? And I was like, don't worry about it.
I am connected.
I know things. And from there,
the fun house.
Yeah, it was like literally it was like 2 weeks after that. Like, I gave them my proposal to the GDP to say, like, what my intentions were, and, like, my business plan, like, came together, a name, everything. We came up, my husband
Where did the name come from?
My husband and I were literally just, like, laying in bed, just, like, spitballing words out to each other. And I knew I kind of, like, had the vibes. So I was like, I want something modern, something a little more different. And then something stuck in my head of my father talking about, like, you know, he makes a cheesecake that he's super proud of. He came into baking later in life, but he has a cheesecake that he makes and he's so proud of it. And he says, you know, I can always tell it's like I did a good job when, like, people eat it and there's, like, not even a crumb left. And so then I was like, then my husband said, well, what about the Modern Crumb? And I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
Stuck.
That's cool.
Because, you know, I had seen, like, some struggles with other people, like bolete. People constantly mispronounce that, right? Boletes? Boletes?
Yeah.
What is that? What's that word?
Yeah.
Or if there's, like, something overly French sounded, like nobody can pronounce it, they're like, oh, yeah, that place. I had that French one, you know.
Modern Crumb's perfect.
Modern Crumb, short and simple.
Yeah. Where did you go after you kind of figured out your menu and everything came together? What was it like opening up in the public market? Because I know that was a big deal when Easton, you know, that was a big project. There was a lot of talk on it. And so, like, when you're now in there and a part of it, because how long has it been open at that point?
So
a year?
So we just had our 3rd anniversary. But at that point, I mean, so the first, like, month, I mean, the public market, I think, had already been open for 4 years.
Yeah.
By the time I joined in. So they were well established. So they were a great support with, like, promotion, social media, helped me out so much in that, because I suck at social media. Like, I don't, in my personal life.
That's so funny that you're like, I suck at social media, and then your pastry was reposted by, like, Complex and, like, First We Feast.
Yeah, that was fun. I was like, what does this mean? That's cool. I don't know what to do. They both
have, like, 7 million followers.
Like, somebody, like, posted, like, look, you're famous. I was like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So that was fun. That was nice. Like,
that's funny though.
Yeah, but, like, I don't have, like, a personal Instagram or anything like that, and so I'm just, like, still.
It's freeing. Stay out of it. Stay out of it.
Learning how to make reels and stuff.
Yeah,
it's stressful.
You need to do it. But once you start getting it going, you have to. You're tied to it. Like, you know,
exactly.
We went to Philly, and then, like, you know, I wanted, well, sometimes I like taking pictures because I fell in love with photography when I was hiking, and I had a new phone, so I wanted to kind of see how it would go. But it's like, I was taking pictures and, like, doing all this stuff, and then I put my phone down and I'm like, oh, here's the concert. Like you're not watching the concert. You're watching the concert through your phone. It's two totally different things. And I look over to my buddy who's like, hey, just send me those pictures. And then I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, oh man, like you're missing the show. And social media is, I like that you're not entangled in that. That's a whole nother headache. Yeah. So you guys are open for what now? 3 years?
Yeah, so we just had our 3rd anniversary, which was really cool. It's just like, I mean, the first anniversary was so bittersweet just because, like, the pandemic had just shut everything down.
Was it right before how long were you in there? A year and then the pandemic hit?
We hadn't even been in there a full year.
Yep.
And then the pandemic hit. And then I was in the bakery. All of my staff had chosen to stay home in quarantine with their families. So I was running the bakery by myself, like,
they weren't letting anyone in right away, were they?
Yeah, nobody was able to come into the bakery. So I didn't have a phone for the first like 9 months that we were open because like I didn't want people calling me. I was like, just send me emails if you have an order. Like I didn't want to take any phone calls.
Smart.
And so then, but people were like, it really pisses us off that we can't get in touch with you. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll get a phone. So I got one of those, I don't know if you've seen it, but like I have an old rotary phone.
Yeah, I have. I didn't know that worked. Yes. Good for you.
That is our bakery.
It's probably like a pain in the ass to get hooked up.
So it was totally easy. It's just plug in and go.
Yeah.
It was just ironic because I got the phone and then 2 weeks later we had to close the building for COVID. So it was really good that I had the phone set up.
Yeah. So how did you get through COVID?
Yeah, so I would just like take phone. I converted overnight. I converted my website to be a shop, so people could come in. They would see what I had offering for the day. They would place their order, and then pay for everything online. And then they would call when they got to the bakery. I would box everything up and run it out to the door. And I'd be like running an order out, and then I'd hear the phone ringing in the background. I'd run back at the next phone call and like just do that like all day.
But what's awesome is hearing this entire story and then now being able to put together as to why you're problem solving and running your business the way you did. Because if you wouldn't have been making bread out of a hotel lobby, this catastrophic event that shut the whole world down, there's people who are still not back from that, and it still is like something that they've either lost their business or even they're still not able to get back into their lives. Where when you work in an atmosphere where you're troubleshooting and you're failing, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that's when people just are able to think on their feet and make an adjustment and be like, cool, all right, we need to change the website over, we need to just start doing pickup only, and this is what we're allowed to do here. We need to keep the business going.
Yeah, that was my whole thing. It was like, what am I going to do? Just sit at home and feel sad about things? Like, I'm just going to be stressed out. So I might as well be at work doing what I can do. And people were so appreciative. They were so like, you don't understand. This is what gets us through the day, knowing that we can come here.
Yeah, it's a piece of normal for people.
Yeah, so that
was a weird time.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird time. But it was very draining. Like it was emotionally draining, but also rewarding. It was very much like a double-edged kind of situation.
Yeah, because there's days where you don't know if there was a time, I tell everybody, is no one was driving. You weren't allowed to leave your house. They were like telling you, like, I remember my neighbor was like sneaking over to drink down here with me because we didn't know what was going on. But like, that's a lot to carry. And then there were some days that felt normal and there wasn't a lot of stress and people talking about stuff. So you thought things would get back to normal sooner. And it was always another wave. And to get through that in brick and mortar is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I know, like the public market, then kind of just the whole mask thing came, and then it eventually is back to where it is now.
Yeah.
So like, so what year is it now? So you got through the pandemic. So that was what, 2 years ago, which is crazy.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
So you're on your 3rd year now, which you're kind of actually your 2nd year if you count it as like normal.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it's like I feel like we came out of the COVID time and then things were like getting back to like normal, and then like all the construction started happening.
Yeah, that sucks.
And that's like pandemic part 2.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, well, this is what I want to transition on. When did your relationships with the other people inside there start working? Do you work with anyone besides sailors?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I actually make bread for everybody in the building.
Hell yeah.
I make all of the brioche buns and slider buns for More Than Q. I do all the lobster rolls and the fish sandwich rolls for Silver Shell. I make all.
How's Silver Shell? I always forget. I'm not a big seafood person. I went to Third and Ferry and started getting introduced to it and talked to Mike over there. I think he has Rod's Dogs or whatever it is. Yeah, it is Rod's Dogs.
Yeah.
And then I always see that when I come in, and I'm never drawn into, but I didn't know they had lobster rolls over there.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Lobster rolls, super good. I'm a big fan. I love like the they have like a crab cake sandwich. That one's really good.
So you make all the buns for them?
Yep. So we make all the buns for them. We make all the flatbread sandwiches for Green Vita. I know they were on your show.
Yeah, I love them.
They're really cool people. Yeah, so we're all over. We're in Maxim 22s. Stokey's is our bread. And then we have Three Birds Coffee House, which is the best coffee house in the Lehigh Valley. I don't know if you ever checked them out before.
Yeah, I know their actual location, and that is like the aesthetic of like what I love. Like when I was saying the original Black and Blue, like that old vibe, and then when you go outside and like that is a very unique, special place. It reminded me of something that you usually find in a city.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. Like so. Originally when I opened the bakery, there was another coffee roaster, Fieldstone Coffee. I don't know if you're familiar. So they left after the pandemic. And then I just like kind of went to Jen and Joe and I was like, I need to talk to you about the future.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, there's a coffee location that just came up. I think you guys should really be in it. It'd be a nice like promotion for your main location. And
What was where Sailors was?
That was Dunder and Heister Butchery.
Yeah.
So
that was a butchery.
Yeah, so it was a butcher first.
That works great though for them that can just plug and play.
Sailors I feel like nothing against Dunder and Heister, but Sailors is a much better fit for Easton.
Yeah.
Dunder, they do a great job promoting grass-fed beef, why grass-fed beef is good for you and why it's, the beef of the future. For me personally, I don't really enjoy the flavor of grass-fed beef, and the price point I don't think really works for Easton as a whole. So Sailors to come in, an established, well-working business like model.
Yeah.
With everything that they do beyond just like their great cuts, like every cut of meat that I've ever had has been the best I've ever had in my life. And you don't really realize
Tim's the man.
Yeah. The difference between like
he was so nervous coming on, and his daughter was like, "This show's way too cool for you, Dad." But they hit it out of the park.
He's so funny. He's got the best dad jokes.
Yep.
Oh my God.
And like there's just like he is just the way he is. It doesn't change. Like it's just that.
Yeah.
I love going and getting the burger meat from him, and like that store in Hellertown. Like I only saw the public market version, and then when you see the Hellertown version of what they did down there, it's like, oh man, this is ridiculous. And then some people don't know about it. I had barbecue friends who draw the one guy drives from Philly to there to pick up the meat. Like they're like a no joke shop, and they do everything a specific way, and I feel like they're one of the best, if not the best, in the valley.
Yeah no, I was really happy they got the best in the valley butcher just this year, so it was well deserved.
They put a lot of work in. None of that's easy, and they have a staff, and their staff's cool. And like we did a pop-up outside of their store for one of their anniversaries. I did the burgers, and my buddy Mitch did barbecue, and I used their burgers for everything, or their hamburger for the smash burgers, but their stuff's top notch. And then, like I said, bringing it back to how it started is when she started doing those sandwiches over there, and I had that I think it was the Italian sandwich she had with like the lemon zest mayo. She's completely talented making those sandwiches, and then I was like, where did you get this bread from? But that's cool that you do that with everybody in there. I didn't know, because I didn't know that you did all that. Now I'm more interested, not that I wouldn't be, but I'm going to get the fish, the lobster roll and stuff, just because I see what that bread did. I mean, their meats and everything are unique and special, and they're definitely above average for what you're paying for is what you get. Like it's really high end stuff that I love, but like how she makes that sandwich and then complemented by the bread, you're only leveling up other businesses in there with your product, which is cool because they can get premium bread same day or however you do it instead of
absolutely. It's like you can't really go.
How do you find the time to do all of that and then make your baked goods? So I mean, it's your primary business is from providing wholesale, or is it from the sales?
Wholesale is a smaller piece of the retail croissants viennoiserie. That is like my main driving force for the retail bakery. Everything else is just kind of nice stuff to help get my name out. And You know, there's a coffee shop in Belvedere, New Jersey that uses only our pastries, and I have a lot
What's the name of it?
King's Gambit.
Yeah, I know King's Gambit. Yeah.
So
there's a hot dog place on the way there.
Oh yeah.
Hot dog Johnny's. They have birch beer. Yeah.
Yes, I like their birch beer too.
Yeah.
Just to like get the name of Modern Crumb out to New Jersey. And like I have people that come from Belvedere, they're like, that come to the bakery and they're like, we had your stuff at King's Gambit and we love it and we come here to see what else you have. So that's always really cool, just stuff like that.
Yeah, you're very talented. And you touch so many people in the area with bread,
right.
And I didn't even know you were doing all that different stuff, or what your story was. What are your plans moving forward? Do you want to get into a second location? Are you okay with that? Do you want to find a bigger location and then, kind of outsource to there to just kind of do your things? And I mean, you have a small place. I mean, are you thinking that like, I could do like a bigger kitchen and then get everything done and then just delivered everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been approached by different people to do a second location. I'm just like super picky, and I just want to make sure everything is the right fit.
Would you keep it in Easton?
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely keep the Modern Crumb where it is now as the kind of like flagship retail.
Yeah, absolutely.
My only thought would be to do a larger kitchen to do more wholesale out of in the future.
Yeah,
that would be like the next big expansion.
And then just have Modern Crumb and Easton running, and then the wholesale stuff just kind of separate, and then just kind of have two driving forces there.
Yeah.
Are you in there every day? You get up early?
Absolutely.
What's your schedule like?
Every day I wake up between 2:30 and 3 a.m.
No. We keep trying to figure out like when we're actually going to be up, to do bagels, and it's going to be early.
Yeah. So,
my whole life's going to change.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's ways you can work around it. Like, have you guys tried to like boil and then freeze and then bake from frozen?
No, but what we've done so far is when we did the burgers, I developed that for selling. So like we wrapped them up, we put them in a box. My friend's like, yo, I microwaved that drunk. My other friend's like, I left it in my glove box for 2 days. It was still good. So like you start like learning how it'll hold up. And then when we did the bagels, we started selling them just out of the lobby, and then people would just get so many that they would freeze them. So I started hearing feedback that you could freeze them, and then I just was like, yeah, probably. And then I did freeze them, and I left them in the freezer for a month, and then I rinsed them off and then wrapped them in a paper towel and then microwaved them for like 30 seconds. And then I toasted it, and I was like, oh yeah, like it's not as good as when it comes out of the oven, but like you can freeze that product.
Yeah, so like one of the things we do to make production easier so that I'm not coming in at like 10 p.m. is like, so the day before we mix all of the doughs and then we retard those doughs overnight. And then when you come in at 4 a.m., then we do the actual dividing, shaping, proofing, baking. So it's like we do little things. So one thing I'm like in the middle of switching up my croissant production. So normally it's that one day you mix the pouliche, the next day you mix the croissanto. The croissanto gets retarded in the walk-in overnight. It gets laminated the next day. Then it gets laminated and put into the freezer. From the freezer, it gets pulled out and defrosted overnight. Then it gets sheeted down again, cut, shaped, proof, baked, so that they're coming out of the oven at 8:30 in the morning when we open at 9 a.m. So if you come to the bakery at 9 a.m., you'll get a hot croissant. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to have to sit down with with you and Gina just to kind of start brain picking it, because that's one thing that like we're not nervous about, but it's the unknown of making it on a super high level. Yeah. And then like it's funny, when we first did a pop-up, we sold like 300 bagels, and she's like, what are you doing? And because we're just doing them out of our house.
Yeah.
And then we didn't know what time we'd have to be up, and then like learning the dough and like the temperature outside. And then we bought a proofer. We bought a proofer from the restaurant store, and then now we're trying to utilize that. And then it's like we watch a lot of footage on like Fuck That's Delicious is going down to the one in New York. I forget the name of it. But then I was watching how they're like pulling out racks from the walk-in, and we're like, well, how do we get it that? Because they're literally pulling them out. They're already shaped.
Yeah.
And then they're going in the boiler. So then we're like, well, how do we do that? And then it's like really just trying to break the whole thing down, and then it's not really
like
going to understand
more
it.
Manageable piece.
Yeah, because it's not what everyone thinks.
Not
it's
like you're coming in.
I can't come in at 2 a.m. because
No.
that's how we the first time we did it. We started so early, and it took all day. And then I was like, yo, we can't do it that way.
Yeah.
And then we kind of like cut our time in half. But with the proofer, because now we can put the trays in, and then it brings it up to But it's funny where you just start learning by mistakes. Where like now we like temp our dough, and we're like, cool, now it can go into boil. But I didn't know you could freeze them after boiling.
Yeah, I've done it both ways before, where I shape it then freeze them shaped, and then proof, boil, then bake.
Yeah.
But then I've also done it where proof shape, boil, and then freeze from boil, and then you just bake.
Yeah, because like that's what we're gonna have to get into.
Yeah,
because it's not.
Then that'll be like, oh, you have to come in 2 hours before you open, and then you just like proof and bake, just to make it easy on yourself for like the AM person.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get a coffee.
Whatever you need, let me know. I'm happy to help.
I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
This has been one of my favorite podcasts. I just kind of like came up to you all spun out because I had a million things to do, and I'm like, yo, you want to come on my podcast? And I'm like driving home, and I'm like, dude, you just sounded like a cokehead. I'm like sweating, and then but whatever, that's what people get.
All good, yeah.
And then to hear the whole story about how it started, and I didn't know where you went to school and your travel and all that stuff and the life you lived going everywhere. And it was really cool how you painted a picture of being in California and all these different places and what you've accomplished in that time and always work. What stood out the entire time is you worked at a high level and were consistent and you kept your shit together. And it shows by what you have. And, it's so cool that you do all the different things for the Valley. I didn't realize you were making the breads for all these places, which now I'm even going to dive into more stuff at the public market because it's really a feather in your cap to like pushing these sandwiches and these things for people to have an experience in Easton. I mean, because like Easton is growing and we talked about how it's becoming like this special thing, and to be able to go get something that tastes like something from the city and for someone to do it correctly and to hold the bar so high up, it's only going to make other people in the Valley have to come to a level that I feel like the area can get to, but a lot of people don't push it to.
It's going to come.
So one, thank you for completely putting the level of sandwich bread, in my opinion, way up here so that people start realizing what they should be using. And two, thank you for just coming on and sharing your story. And I'm excited to get into other things, and I want to pick your brain on bagels and other things. And you're a very unique, special thing to the Valley. And I'm so glad that Pancakes was able to highlight you on the level that he did, because more people should know what you're doing down there. I want to give you a chance to kind of plug your social media or anywhere that anyone can get a hold of you, your products, or how they can go purchase the things that you're doing.
Yeah, so we're inside the Easton Public Market. That's at 325 Northampton Street. So we're open from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. So definitely come in and check us out. And then you can see us on Instagram at modern_crumb. Come see all the special dishes of the day and everything that we do. And
Cool. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Of course. If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, it's neveragainstudio.com. That has all of the things that we're doing. It has the merch. It has the podcast. It has the audio, the video. You can watch it on there. If you're just an audio guy, the easiest way to do it is Spotify and iTunes. That stuff's built into your phone. You just type in Never Again Studio, and this will come up. The YouTube. Follow the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a cooking show eventually where we could have done something today, so I'm excited to get into a new space so then we can just go boom, boom, boom. So subscribe to that. There's going to be more content coming on the YouTube, and once we hit 1,000, then we can start doing bigger projects because we can monetize off of it. So thank you so much for listening and watching, and thank you for taking time out of your day.
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.